Before you watch
Come
this
closer,
story,
feel this
ask
heat.
yourself one question. How well do you really know the people closest to you?
Want to help me with
Because
this?
what you're about to hear
I'd love
isn't
to.
just a story, it's
You're
a
so
warning.
sweet.
One
Only for
truth,
you.
buried for years, surfaced in a single night, and by morning, nothing, and no one, was the same. If you love stories with shocking twists and unforgettable endings, hit subscribe right now, because this one will stay with you long after it ends. It started like any other quiet evening, the kind that feels so ordinary you barely notice it slipping into memory, the kind that carries no warning signs, no tremors beneath the surface to hint that by dawn everything you thought you understood about your life would be shattered into pieces you could never quite put back together. And I remember thinking, as I stood by the kitchen window watching the rain fall in thin silver lines against the glass, that there was something almost comforting about the stillness of it all. The predictable rhythm of our lives, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant ticking of the clock on the wall, and the faint laughter of my younger sister Sarah drifting in from the living room where she sat scrolling through her phone, unaware, just like me, that we were standing on the edge of something irreversible, something that had been waiting for years to surface, buried beneath silence, secrets, and carefully constructed lies. My father wasn't home yet, which wasn't unusual, and my mother had gone upstairs early, claiming a headache, though I had noticed the way her hands trembled slightly when she set her tea down on the table, the way her eyes avoided mine as if she were carrying something too heavy to share, something that had been eating away at her for far longer than she was willing to admit, and at the time I brushed it off, convincing myself that everyone has their quiet struggles, their private storms, but looking back now, I realized that was the first crack in the illusion, the first sign that something was deeply wrong. The doorbell rang at exactly 9:17 p.m. I remember the time because everything after that moment burned itself into my memory with unnatural clarity, every second stretched and sharpened as if the world itself knew what was about to unfold, and I hesitated for just a moment before walking toward the door, a strange unease settling in my chest, the kind you can't quite explain, the kind that makes your instincts whisper that you should turn back, pretend you didn't hear it, let someone else answer, but I didn't listen, and I opened the door. There was a man standing there, soaked from the rain, his coat clinging to him, his face pale but determined, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my stomach twist, and for a moment neither of us spoke, the silence between us thick and heavy, until he finally said my name, not as a question, but as a certainty, and that was when I knew that whatever was about to happen, it wasn't a coincidence. "I need to talk to your family," he said, his voice steady but edged with something deeper, something urgent, something that felt like it had been held back for far too long. I should have said no. I should have told him to leave. But instead, I stepped aside and let him in. That decision would change everything. Sarah looked up from the couch, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion as the man entered, water dripping onto the floor, his presence immediately disrupting the fragile sense of normalcy that had filled the room just minutes earlier, and I could see the questions forming in her mind, the same questions echoing in mine, but before either of us could speak, my mother's voice called from the top of the stairs, asking who it was, and something in the man's posture stiffened, as if he had been waiting for that exact moment. "Tell her it's Daniel," he said quietly. The name hit me like a distant echo of something half forgotten, something I couldn't quite place, but before I could process it, my mother appeared at the top of the stairs, and the moment her eyes landed on him, everything changed. She froze. Not just paused, not just hesitated, froze completely, as if time itself had stopped, her face draining of color, her hand gripping the railing so tightly I thought she might collapse, and in that instant, I understood that this wasn't a stranger, not really, not to her, and whatever connection they shared, it was something powerful enough to break through years of silence in a single heartbeat. "No," she whispered, barely audible, but the man, Daniel, heard it. "Yes," he replied, and then the truth began to unravel. What followed didn't come all at once, not in a neat, understandable explanation, but in fragments, pieces of a story that had been hidden for decades, each revelation more shocking than the last, each one reshaping the foundation of everything we believed about our family, about our past, about ourselves, and I remember feeling as though the ground beneath me was shifting, as though the life I had known was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion, one that was now collapsing under the weight of something far more real, far more complicated. Daniel wasn't just a stranger. He was connected to us in a way we could never have imagined. And the truth he carried had been buried for 20 years. That night, we learned that the man we called our father wasn't who we thought he was. We learned that our mother had been living with a secret so devastating, so dangerous, that she had built her entire life around keeping it hidden. And we learned that some truths don't just come to light, they explode. The rain outside grew heavier as the night went on, as if the world itself was reacting to what was unfolding inside our home, and with every word Daniel spoke, the pieces began to fall into place, forming a picture that was both impossible to ignore and impossible to fully comprehend. And I remember looking at Sarah, seeing the same disbelief mirrored in her eyes, the same desperate hope that there had been some kind of mistake, that this couldn't be real, that our lives couldn't be unraveling like this in front of us. But it was real, every word of it, and by the time the truth had fully come to light, there was no going back. Because some nights don't just change your life, they redefine it, and that night transformed ours forever.